Good afternoon, everybody. I am pleased to be invited in venue. I'm very glad to you have me for having me in ML in PL pre-conference meeting. So I'm going to tell a few words about problems connected to renewable energy sources and how those problems could be addressed with machine learning. So the agenda of this presentation is that I'm going to present some research in three stages of it, which is first economic motivation, which is the operation of energy system. Secondly, how theoretical problems result from this economic motivation, and thirdly, I'm going to a few words about what are we going to do, how we are going to organize ourselves to address these problems. So. Here is the economic motivation. We see the advent of renewable energy sources like solar panels, windmills, and so on. There is more and more of them. They constitute an increasing share of all the sources of energy, right? But the problem with these sources is that they are unpredictable. They are as predictable as weather is predictable in a given spot, right? So, for instance, the day before yesterday predictions of yesterday weather were that there would be no rain in Warsaw, but actually there was rain in Warsaw yesterday. So who knows how the windmills and solar panels will be efficient tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. We are not sure about it. So this raises a lot of problems where those sources are, such as windmills and solar panels, are exploited to produce energy, but they are, frankly speaking, they are unreliable. So therefore, it's difficult to control the whole system. But fortunately, we can address many of these problems with machine learning. So talking about the energy system, we at least need to say a few words about, unwillingly need to say about a few words about politics. Well, especially in Europe, there is a lot of pressure on forces because there is a widespread persuasion that we burn a lot of coal to produce energy. Burning coal produces a lot of fumes and smoke, and especially carbon dioxide. So the climate is getting warmer, and the planet will soon burn, and we will all die out. Which is to some extent true, but to what extent I don't know, because as far as I know, climatologists have very much divided opinions about it. However, what is sure about it, and was the basic premise for our research, is that civilization needs energy, and it needs more and more energy because we have very large developing countries such as China and India. So it can be expected that their energy consumption will increase many times. There are estimates that their energy consumption will be proportional to, because it will be proportional to to gross domestic product per capita, and it will increase about 4 times in 20 years or so. Then probably a little more, but anyway, it will increase rapidly. So the humankind globally will produce and consume much more energy, and large part of this energy will come from dispersed various sources, such as solar energy or wind energy, or the energy of tides, or the flow of the water, and so on. Some of these energy sources are weather dependent, and therefore they are not reliable. So the problem of managing these sources becomes significant. All right. So the first problem that I am going to talk about, I'm going to talk about 3 problems. So the first problem is how to manage the energy grid. All right. So what do we have in the energy grid? We have first of all, we have power plants. These are the sources of this potential climate problem, right? They produce a lot of carbon dioxide. They, especially in Poland, they mostly burn coal, right? This is why they produce carbon dioxide. So we have power plants. We have, of course, consumers, such as households and districts in cities. Wherever people live, they consume some energy. We have, of course, solar panels, windmills, and other such weather-dependent sources. They are more and more widespread. Right? 10 years ago, it was uncommon to see solar panels in Poland. Now it's very common. The same about wind. We have storages such as batteries, but also whenever a part of the river, whenever there is a barrier on the river, it's an energy storage. Whenever the water flows through this barrier, it produces energy, but when the water is pumped up, then the energy is stored. So the concept of storing energy is not exclusively connected to batteries. It's also connected to just water. All right. So how this system generally works? So what you see here is the usual daily consumption energy within a country such as Poland, actually in any country in the world. So the time is passing by. Here we have this red line represents the actual consumption of electric energy. Right, so whenever you switch on something like a computer, then you contribute to this graph being a little higher. Whenever you switch something up, or switch something off, you contribute to reduction in energy consumption. But, well, it's not predictable when you are going to switch on your computer. Right? It's predictable to just some extent. But the thing is that it's you personally probably don't contribute very much to global energy consumption. But let's imagine this building we are in. When it's getting warmer, right? And when it's when the sun is shining more strongly, then this building consumes more energy because of air conditioning, right? And this is a great energy consumer. So this is actual consumption. It's to a large extent unpredictable. We have a scheduled production. In what sense it's scheduled? Power plants are not particularly flexible. They need to be switched on and switched off according to a predefined schedule. So you can't switch them off when they produce too much energy. You can increase to some extent, you can increase their energy production. When they are, let's say, switched on, they just burn more coal and then they produce more energy. So we have this scheduled production. Here we have some production of electric energy by solar panels and all those weather-dependent sources. So they contribute to this global energy production. And then there is this difference, and with this difference, some power plants within the system. There are some power plants that are committed to produce this missing energy. So whenever you switch on your computer, a certain power plant burns more coal to produce this energy, right? Well, and when you switch this computer off, then the same power plant produces less electric energy. All right, so it works fine. But what happens when the weather is too good? Meaning that the sun is shining too much, or the wind is blowing too strong. Then the whole system produces much more energy because it's not possible to switch off the power plants fueled by coal. Then the whole system produces excessive energy, right? More energy than we consume. And what happens then? Actually, the solar and the wind installations are just switched off, or at least some of them. And therefore, actually, right now, at the moment in Poland, 30% of energy coming from renewable energy sources are lost because they just produce too much energy for it to be managed, right? So if we wish that all of the energy will be produced by the natural sources, it's not technically possible. At least, in such a case, we would waste, I don't know, probably 90% of the energy, at least very large part of the energy actually produced by right? So when we install these days, when we install more solar panels and more windmills, then this average loss will only increase. So it's a real problem, real problem that we need to address somehow. So how can we address this problem with machine learning? By controlling the storages. We just need to fill them up when there is too much energy and in the system, and release the energy from the storages when there is, say, too little energy within the system. So in this order, we could apply multi-agent reinforcement learning. So a few words about reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning is about sequential decision making under uncertainty. It's about the process such as playing a game, right? So you need to make some decision. You need to make a sequence of decision that what's going on always results from previous decision, right? So in this case, how much energy we have stored depends on the earlier decision about starting to store the energy. All right, so reinforcement learning is about trial and error learning to gain highest rewards in the future. So we don't know how to make the decisions on the basis of what we observe, but we can learn how to do it, confronting our earlier decisions with the profit that we get. All right. In multi-agent reinforcement learning, we have multiple agents in the same environment, such as our energy storages. We have many of them, and they need to somehow coordinate their operation. What is new in this scenario, which is what is uncommon and what is not covered by existing theory, is that the environment, when it all happens, takes the form of the graph. So the agents are located in the nodes of the graph of the energy network, and they directly impact others through the edges. All right, so so the sketch of our approach is that this is all based on a graph neural network with the nodes of the graph representing the nodes of the energy network. At each time, for each state, for each storage, we make predictions of the results of certain hypothetical situations. So there are three situations. First of all, we use the storage to extract the energy from the system, to store the energy taken from the system. This is our first possible decision. Our second possible decision is to is to release the energy to the system. And of course, the third decision to make is to do nothing. And the question is, what would be the potential profits from each of these decisions, right? And the role of the graph neural network is to predict those. Well, and then the decision making is easy. When we have the potential results of the decision, we just choose the decision that is going to produce the most profits. All right. Another topic that we are going to address is automated trading. Let's come back to make the distinction. Let's come back to this graph. So here we assume that there is an entity such as network operator that has the storages and possibly the plants, and its role is to make decisions about their operation, about the role of this entity, such as what entity do we have in mind? So a large energy network operator. Right? There are a handful of them in Poland. There are handfuls of them in each country. But basically, they need to make decisions about the whole operation of the network that they govern. But these are not the only entities, the only companies that operate on the system. There are smaller entities that own, let's say, a single storage. And then how those entities, how those companies operate is they buy electricity and sell electricity on the market. So they are dependent. They don't govern the whole system. They are dependent on other players with by means the market, right? And therefore we need automated trading for them. So let's imagine we have a single energy storage. So what do we do? So we are a single entity. We operate on a day-ahead energy market. So how this market works? Each day before 10:30 a.m. we bid. We bid, which means that we place order of buying or selling an electricity at a given hour next day. Like for instance, we place 24 bids in the form at hour 00, we would like to buy 5 megawatts hour of energy at a certain price of a single megawatt hour, which is about 300 zloty or something like that. And so we place 24 such bids because we place each bid for each hour the next day. This is probably the least we could do, but the most we could do is to present the whole demand and supply curve on the market for each hour. So what's a demand curve or supply curve? Demand curve defines how much energy we are going to buy from the market depending on the price. Right? And the supply curve says how much energy we are going to buy from to sell to the market depending on the price. So usually it's like this, that when the price is low, we are the storage owner, then we would like to buy the cheap energy, right? But when the energy is expensive, then we are going to sell this. We make profit by buying cheap energy and selling expensive energy. So we present our demand curve and our supply curve for each hour the next day. What happens next is that the market operator aggregate all the curves of all the participants of the market, right? And this market operator defines market prices for each hour. But from these market prices, we know from the market price for the given hour, we know how much energy we either will sell, or in this case, we will sell some energy, and in this case, we will buy some energy. And how much energy? How much energy we are going to sell or buy. This results from our presented demand and supply curve and the price and the market price. All right, so the question is, the question is how to designate these caps to make the most profit. It's actually, as you can imagine, it's a quite significant question because there is a lot of money at stake, right? So our approach is to see this whole thing. We see this whole process as a Markov decision process. Markov decision process is a general model that is in which we define problem that is being solved with reinforcement learning. In order to define this Markov decision process, we define state or observations, and in this case, state and observations is actually everything that can impact the future prices. Right? So every information that is significant for future prices, not for the next day prices, but for the prices, generally prices in the future. Right? So whatever is relevant for that, we need to account for it. We need to take it into account. The actions is a set of bits. There is one caveat for this. Previously, as I draw it here, the curve may have any shape. But actually, in the system, the demand and the supply curve is defined by a set of points. Right, so actually it takes this form, right? So we need to automatically define not only where these points are, we need to also define how many of these points there are. And it becomes tricky because then the problem becomes non-parametric. Right? We not only need to define a certain vector, but actually we also need to define the dimension of this vector. And the reward in this whole story is, of course, the financial profit. There are a lot of theoretical and practical problems. So first of all, how to provide all relevant information. Secondly, how these actions could have different dimensions. Right? This is theoretically very interesting. All right, and the second problem, the second main issue that I'm going to talk about a few words is how to design automatically the energy network. So we consider a changing, transforming energy network, right? So new cities emerge, some cities decline, there are more people in some places, less people in other places. So the energy network that serves this whole system, that serves the people and the economy, also needs to undergo transformation. So the question is how to automatically design the network. So the network needs to be adjusted. All right, the network needs to correspond to the requirements, right? The requirements are somehow given. Like for instance, the road network is given, the location of people is given, and so on. We need a new network that responds to the requirements defined by the locations of the roads and the people. So we have some functional requirements. They are generally given by a graph. And based on them, we need to design another graph. Well, I think it's more important. I think it's important to notice that it's only a representative of a certain more general problem, which is whenever we design something, let's say with a CAD tool, right? We for instance, design an installation in a building, whatever, water installation, electric installation, right? So this installation is essentially a graph, right? We need to design this installation based on another graph that represents the building, right? And so actually the problem is very similar. And generally, the generic problem of this kind is that given a certain graph that represents the requirement, we need to automatically generate another graph, right? So how can we approach this problem? For instance, this graph that represents given functional requirements, we translate into an embedding that is of given dimension. Then we just transform this embedding into another embedding that represents the required graph, right? And then the search transformation transforms this embedding into the output graph. The question is how to define these transformations. There are some ideas about it, but they are all not particularly efficient. Actually, they are not particularly effective, rather said. And of course, all these transformations are trained. So the approach that we have in mind is based on graph neural networks, actually on graph autoencoders. So what we have in mind is a recursive graph encoder that translates the graph into the embedding, and recursive graph decoder that transforms the embedding into the resulting graph. They are all recursive because the idea is that we apply the divide and conquer rule, which is we divide the graph into subgraphs and produce the embeddings for these subgraphs. Then we combine these embeddings to the embedding of the whole graph, right? And we do it, of course, recursively. And the problem is, of course, how to do it. All right, so these are the problems. These are the imaginable solutions. So what we are going to do about it and how we are going to approach these problems. So first of all, artificial intelligence is these days very much application driven. It's not that something is invented in this field and waits another century to be applied to something, in the economy. No. 92% of money spent on research in artificial intelligence comes from industry. Especially the money comes from large corporations such as Meta. Google was the corporation that stands behind Google. Alphabet, yeah, Alphabet and so on. Right? This just works this way. This is because this is why these corporations has grown so large, right? Because they invest money very well and gain a lot of that they produce significant added value out of artificial intelligence. This is because this is why this business is so productive, right? So, so because of this, because AI is so much application driven, every useful or every research that is considered useful will be monetized sooner or later. So our idea is actually nothing very creative, but the idea is that we are going to be the ones that will monetize our research. And actually, IDEAS NCBR is the company that that strongly supports creations of spin-offs within its structure, right? So this is the idea, right? We are going to carry on research, then having obtained very good theoretical results, we are going to start a company and monetize this research. All right. So the nearest future plan is as follows. A team is formed within IDEAS NCBR. The name of this team is Learning and Control in Graphs and Networks team. And the plan is to employ the leader. Actually, the leader is employed. I am the leader. But we are going to employ 3 postdocs and 6 PhD students. And well, the motto is that there is nothing as practical as good theory. So, having developed some good theory, we will try to after, of course, having produced sufficient number of good papers and patents, we are going to continue creating the spin-off company, and we are going to plan to implement this research results. So I welcome you to join. All right.
And if someone is interested in joining, let's say, how do they contact you?
Well, we can just talk, or here you have my email.
Thank you.
So I am very approachable whenever you have any questions regarding these topics that I have covered or other topics, then please let me know. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, then yes, please.
I have a question about the recursive encodings of graphs.
Right.
How do you partition a graph to smaller subgraphs? Is there some special way to approach this?
Well, the idea that we have tried already is to partition the graph according to the original indexing of the nodes. Right. So, roughly speaking, we just have the nodes listed, right? So we get the upper half and the lower half and so on, right? But so let's say it was a feasibility study. It works quite well, but a lot remains to be done.
So you're using multi-agent RL.
Right.
I'm not that familiar with it, but it kind of sounds like, well, RL is already difficult, and multi-agent RL, that seems like a even more difficult task. So why does those problems that you were talking about, why do they have to be formulated with multi-agent RL?
Right. the reason is that the whole system is very complex. Like for instance, in Poland, in the energy system is a network with about 6,000 significant nodes, right? So we can, if we approach control of such a system with plain reinforcement learning, then we end up with a very large state space and a very large action space. Actually, large meaning with a multidimensional, very multidimensional, right? And so then we need to a lot of data to train the agent that manages the system, right? And so actually we need some decomposition for each sub-problem to be much less difficult and to be manageable, actually to be possible to solve with little data.
And do you train those agents in some simulation? Do you use any real data or?
Yeah, we train the agents with. Yeah, it's another problem. I haven't mentioned that, but it's probably a good opportunity to mention the problem. Of course, learning of this system in real time is impossible because that would mean random control of the whole country energetic system, right? So nobody would be very happy if that happened, right? So we need to collect the data, then apply it, use it in some form of simulation or to train the policies offline based on the data. Yes.
So my question was, have you tried any other method than reinforcement learning or maybe some benchmarks? And so
well, frankly speaking, we are aware of other approaches, but we think that reinforcement learning is just the right approach.
okay.
Yes.
And in the simulation, you also consider storage capacity limitations of each unit?
Yeah, of course. So actually, it's a most significant constraint.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you go on a little bit more about the state?
Yeah, but in which problem? In managing the network or in automated trading?
Automated trading.
Right. Right. So what's relevant for the prices is especially the weather. So the state space mainly describes the weather forecasts and possibly other economic indicators. So actually, whatever we can scrap, we try to use and see what happens.
Have you tried to apply the technical strictly investigate environment? Some averages of the prices, trends of the price going up and
down. What we do actually is we relate the prices to the moving average price. Right, so they are not defined as absolute values, but they're as relative values. We think of other economic indicators, but the problem with economic indicators taken from technical analysis is that this market works a little different than let's say a stock market or foreign exchange market, because it's not online. In this market we cannot respond to the change of prices, because first we define the bids for all the coming day, and we just get the prices, and we cannot then react somehow to their change. That's so generally the problem, very important problem, how to feed this system with proper data. Yes, please.
You mentioned that currently it's not an online market. I think in the future it could turn into an online market when the prices are more often updated.
Yeah, I think it will happen. Actually, okay. To say more about it, this day-ahead energy market is the most significant market that balances the supply and demand of energy of electricity within the system. But there is another market which is our ahead market. But the volume of trade on this other market is much smaller, and there are many hours at each. There are no transactions at all, right? So it's not possible to. It would be unreasonable to assume that whatever energy we can buy and store within our storage, we can just sell out another hour. This is why we focus on the day-ahead energy market, because it's practically much more important.
So you're using graph neural networks to control the let's say the whole grid,
right?
And are there any approaches, or is it like with RL? So there are other approaches, but you just choose to use graph neural networks.
Well, in my view, the whole field. Of course, we are not the only ones that address this problem, but definitely it's a growing field. It's actually let's say it's a newborn field. So there are some works, there are some approaches. Actually, to the best of my knowledge, all of them are somehow based on graph neural networks.
Actually, my question is related to other methods that current market actors. Yeah, I guess this is related also to baseline that we're trying to beat. What are some other methods, and how would you rate your algorithm implementation?
There was a work in ICML 2022 about this issue. In this work, there is a distinction between the backbone network that is managed one way and the rest of the network that is managed otherwise. Well, we have not compared yet to this work, but we will do it. So the answer to the question how our methods relate to others is that they very well, but certainly this one is the one that we still need to compare to.
Right. So if there are no more questions, I would like to say a big thank you to Paweł Wawrzyński for incredible talk, and also a big appreciation to IDEAS NCBR for hosting us today. I guess we'll meet at a conference this autumn, and enjoy the networking session. Thank you.